really, I actually want to say, raced through the theory about what to consider when we are taking on this a new client. It really is a lot. And now I also want to take you through the probe document itself. Now, I must tell you that when I normally train this in a face-to-face training, I can take a whole day just discussing what we are doing in this 2 hours. So yes, if you feel like you don't know if you're coming or going, where's the tornado that's just hit you? Yes, it is almost like a tornado that's going to spin you all around. But there's a lot of detail in the slides. Please go and take some time to read through that. You really can benefit a lot from it. And then also in the documents that we're going to show you that we've completed in preparation for the course, we've really taken the time to properly document responses in the caseware file. So that can hopefully also help you quite a bit. All right, so let's get going then with our Probe Audit Premium Plus methodology. So depending on whether you have attended a session before or not, you may remember, first of all, that we have an analogy in Probe Audit Premium where we say that it's almost like wanting to go on a trip or to go somewhere. And what we basically do most of the time is we say that when we want to determine whether we've got enough audit evidence, we determine where we want to go, almost like wanting to go on a trip using our Google Maps or the old Garmin's, your GPSs, etc. And we say, where do we want to get to? We want to get to a low enough audit risk at the end of the audit so that we can sign an audit opinion knowing we have not signed the incorrect audit opinion. So we want to get to a low desired audit risk. And in that regard, then basically saying our desired audit risk must be lowish. And what are the lowish levels? The levels is low, very low, or minimum. Minimum being the very lowest that you can go, and the more risk you have or the more concerned you are about the impact of your audit opinion possibly having negative effects, the lower you would want to go in your desired audit risk. Right. So, for example, or just to mention that, then the two inputs into the desired audit risk is firstly the going concern risk at the planning stage. So if I am concerned that maybe the going concern risk at the planning stage is indicating to me that there's a problem here, that maybe the client should not be applying the going concern basis of accounting, then that is going to make me do more work all over the place, if I can say it like that. So we're going to do more work, get more assurance, more comfort before we sign an audit opinion. The other side to that is the users, not just any users, but specifically the consideration of whether the users of the financial statements, external users of the financial statements, are indicating to us that there is an increased risk to us as auditors that they are going to rely on our opinion specifically. Right, so that's the only theory we have. I see a question, where can I get the slide? So if you were in the previous session and you had downloaded the slides, this is one of those slides in the group session, in the slides from the group session. I will also at the end of the session try to quickly load it up as a handout, and we will also load it up as content to the success community. I had not uploaded it to the success community beforehand, but it was part of the slides from the previous session. All right. Let me quickly, I'm not going to try and load it up as a handout now, but we will make all of these slides available to you also after the session. Good. So let's go then and go to our caseware file. So what you will see in our caseware file is that the client, hang on, let me just show you this. I want to just quickly close my slides because otherwise that's in my way all the time. Oh, goodness, let me, caseware file. Right. So the client that we're going to work with for this whole series is called Wrap Up Manufacturing, and our year end, note that very specifically, is April 2023. So on the success community, when you are downloading the material, you will see that you've basically just, I can't can't remember now if there was other stuff also. Shucks, for a moment there, I've completely forgotten now. Quickly check here. I think you've just got this caseway file to download from the Success Community. I don't think there's any other working papers or stuff in there. But okay, the caseway file is to be downloaded from this link. So if you say Audit Level 2 Probe Audit Premium Plus, that is the link that's going to download the caseway file for you. We're going to use that file for the whole series, all 5 sessions. Okay, so if you didn't download it now for today, don't worry. You can download it before next time maybe, and you can follow along. I'm not going to be typing too much today. I'm going to highlight a few of the points from the theory, from the slides, so that we can just say, that point that I mentioned, this is where it's applied. That point that I mentioned, this is where it's applied. Okay, good. So wrap up manufacturing then, and the document that we are working with is 1020. Maybe also just a thought, in case you've never done planning before, if this is going to be your first time after this, before you start your planning documents, remember that it's really best to import your trial balance and map that, and also to open your information store. I say that because when I test software, and I test software quite often, I often forget to open the information store. And the information store will activate, I almost want to say silly things, like sometimes the question for the Companies Act doesn't pop up, or things like that. And you just have to open your information store. There's a script that runs that makes things work or not work if you don't let it run. So 2 things to do before you start in engagement evaluation: import your trial balance and map it, and just open your information store. Go. All right, so then we go to engagement evaluation and we start completing that. Now, if you, okay, I see, sorry that I'm interrupting myself now. I see someone says unable to load the file. It's been accessed on a higher version. Then that means that you don't have Caseware 2024 yet. You're still working on Caseware 2023. We launched Caseware 2024 in, I think, October last year already. So you'll have to first upgrade to Caseware 2024 before you'll be able to use this file. We had to use Caseware 2024 because we're also using the 2024 template, which was launched with that. All right, but have a look at that afterwards then, and then just make sure that you sort that out before you join next time. Remember, that's not just the fact that you have Caseware 2024. It's almost like having, once you want to say, another operating system or the newer operating system on your phone or your computer. It doesn't mean that your template changes. So you can run the old template on the new Caseware. So if you're concerned about templates, don't worry about that so much, but you need to have Caseware 2024 to open this file. All right. So what you will notice is that, well, we're using the latest template. So the template has changed, and you will now see that you are selecting audit single legal entity. Today's session is not at all about groups, but just note there that there are 2 new engagement types there added about groups. If you are unsure what that means or how to use that, there is a recording of, I think, about 3 hours about groups. Even though it's 3 hours, it is very quick, very high level, but it does give you some information. But groups, yes, ISO 600 revised, a whole different ballgame. All right, so there we are asking if the audit is required in terms of a statute, like, for example, the Companies Act. So I'm just saying, yes, the Companies Act requires the audit. And then, do the financial statements include information of more than one legal entity? That's just to confirm that we're not doing audits, group audits. Just a few questions to help you to check that in selecting a single legal entity audit, you did in fact select the right item. Country of incorporation, it's South Africa, but also there is a function in my template where I say that I audit in South Africa. The category of the entity, this will also help me to determine if the Companies Act is even applicable at all. If it is a non-profit company, or, well, a closed corporation or anything like that, then that will also determine other requirements. Right. PI score automatically pulls through from the PI score document, so that's also helpful. But I will need to go to that PI score document to first go and complete it. Does the Memorandum of Incorporation require an audit? Yes, no, that also drives a few other points. So the benefit of these documents, you might already know that or maybe not, is really that when you are answering these questions, we try and actually make it efficient as you go through the rest of the documents, so that you don't have to complete questions again and again. Whether financial statements independently compiled and completed, remember you've got that definition where I said it's either independently compiled and reported or it is internally compiled or reported, right? And then here it also just confirmed what you documented on the public interest score document to say this is what you documented. So yes, it can help you to actually just be sure that you are consistent. Then just to ensure that you selected the appropriate type of question, so that's great. Then is the engagement partner required to rotate based on the number of years that he or she has been involved in the audit? If that is required, then well, then I'm gonna say yes, he is. If we've got a new partner, and also remember that these guidance little bits and pieces that pop up also help you with some of the requirements. You will see, and we're going to get to that point just now, that I'm using the extended version of Probe. I'm particularly fond of the extended version. The difference is that if you're using the core version, you will have a file that prompts you to meet the requirements of the, as in the requirement paragraphs of the auditing standards. So you will be prompted to meet all the requirement paragraphs of the auditing standards. If you choose extend, as for the last, I'd say the last 4 or 5 years or so, we've started to introduce this concept of saying, let's not only comply with the requirement paragraphs, but also help you to comply with the application material, as in the A paragraphs, but then also other guidance that's issued by the IAASB or IRBA staff alerts and things like that. Probably the best example there is to show you the difference, or to tell you the difference between ISA 315 or the application paragraphs and the requirement paragraphs. So like considering IT, things like that, that really is a difference. And the best practice really is to always have your extended version on, because there will probably always be more junior staff in your team who has not done the planning or the audit or whatever it is before, and may actually miss requirements from the auditing standards, from the not requirements, but the application material could guide them to make a better file. So that's why I always use the extend. That's just safer, I guess. Then this question about small or large. So 10, 12 years ago, small and large was a big thing, because we had different tabs that would open up, we had additional questions, etc., etc. That's to some degree possibly been replaced by extended, but the concept was different. For small, we said, what are the requirements? That was the minimum requirements for small entities, and that was in the ISAs back then. Nowadays, that concept is not that extensive anymore. The small will still have somewhat less documentation, but the big difference really came in your risk assessment back in the days. And now the standard says you must do your risk assessment for every item, but we will only go and do audit work where we have risk. So the small, large difference in the template, the practical application of the template, has largely fallen away because of ISA 315. I get a question, how do I put on the extend? We're getting there just now. I'm going to show you. So then in this case, the question number 12 is, do we elect to use the extended procedures to assist the engagement team with gathering information? Yes, to use the detailed guidance, right? So that's where you respond to switch on the extend. If I say no, I'm going to just quickly do that. You'll see that it changes to core. The questions don't become less or more, like extremely. You don't see that necessarily, but there are instances where you will have more guidance, more instructions, etc. in the extended version. All right, then in terms of first time audits, or what is the word, initial engagement, right? There we say, is this the first audit of the entity? If it was, is it the first time that the client is, the first year that the client's operating, because then we won't have opening balances. So there's a variety of those questions that gets prompted, and also there's a lot of visibility. So obviously if it's not the first time we're auditing it, then it can't be the first year that they're operating. So that question just gets hidden. We do consider the previous year's audit report. We consider what is, firstly, whether management includes all of those charters of governance. I almost want to use the word owner-managed business here, right? If it is a so-called owner-managed business, then there will be some questions that you will ask management that also those charters of governance. But if they're separate, you'll be prompted to ask those charters of governance separate from the management guys. Good. Then just what are they called? Of course, in the case of a trust, for example, you'll call them trustees or whatever it is. Then in our IFRS for SMEs template, which is what I'm using here, you can select IFRS for SME or other. Because we are selecting IFRS for SMEs, and it has been determined that IFRS for SMEs is an acceptable framework to be audited, it is general purpose, and it is, oh, now I've forgotten the last concept. You will not be prompted to consider those items later on. But if I do say it's other, let's say entity-specific basis of accounting, then in considering your preconditions for an engagement, you will have to consider whether that framework is an acceptable framework, right? So because we've got IFRS for SMEs, we already have that appropriately done. Also note the change in the wording for IFRS for SME. Is it the IFRS Foundation, I think, issued guidance last year about what the standard should be referred to, primarily driven by the fact that there are now IFRS accounting standards and IFRS sustainability standards. So just note the wording there. Then, or whether the financial statements or financial reporting standards are supplemented by local legislation. There's some considerations there. We had discussed that when we went through the theory. And then independence. Are we required to prepare the financial statements? Yes. See ethical considerations of whether we are allowed to, because the moment I say yes, I'm required to prepare the financial statements, there is a question that says, hang on, does section 90 subsection 2 allow this? Okay, so we need to actually document this then and say, yes, it does. How did we consider this? It's not a statutory audit, etc. Okay, this is now not, or because I'll tell you why this happened. I'm going to just scroll up where I said, is this audit required in terms of a statute? Oh my goodness, sorry guys. If I had said no, this is not required in terms of a statute, then section 90 would possibly not be a problem. I would still consider it, but it won't be that big a problem. Why? Well, because we don't have those strong independence requirements in terms of the Companies Act. Okay. Is the entity classified as a public interest entity? And please note that that requirement did change last year. So you need to make sure that you understand the definition of a public interest entity to go and consider this. And also, if your firm has a record or a register of public interest entities, make sure that you refer to that. Because you might think it's not a public interest entity, or you might think it is a public interest entity, and then in fact it's not a public interest entity. So please confirm that you have that understanding appropriate. Consideration about key audit matters. When we say here that this is not something we're going to report on, then it cuts out basically all the rest of the work during the rest of the file for us. But if we do say yes, it is going to be reported, then we will have to go and consider in 1050 and also in other documents what and how we are going to report the key audit matters. Right, so we already almost want to say, just switching off that light here to say we don't have to think about this again going forward. And so that way we have the independence, the compliance, all of those questions addressed. Then, because we are using IFRS for SME, we need to check whether the client is appropriately using IFRS for SME. So can they use IFRS for SME? And we need to test the requirements for when IFRS for SME is not allowed. Do we want to apply the guidance supplied by SICA for IFRS for SME for micro entities? So just when you can say that none of these things are happening, then there's a few questions that automatically fall away, and there's a number of steps, procedures in the work program that also automatically falls away. So if you want to apply that, that's available. I must say, I don't see that very often. It's almost like an extend. Let's rather consider them when we want to, but if you want to use, say already, yes, I definitely know that, then great, you can switch it off. Here's our section then under engagement continuance to consider the preconditions for the audit. Has management agreed to accept? Do we have the engagement letter? What is the latest date of the engagement letter? and are we able to perform our work free of any scope limitations. Should we update the engagement letter? We consider that and then document further. Do we have a lack of resources, especially ISO 220 now says we need to really consider whether we have all the resources that we need. Do we have access to the people that we need to have access to? Can we do the work? So that's really quite important. And then we almost move into, I want to say, like starting to understand the client, starting to consider whether there are any risks for us, reputational risk and so forth. And then it's in terms of the quality management system to determine whether engagement quality review is required in terms of our policies. And also maybe just to quickly mention, if we do say yes, we are prompted to say go and add perhaps an extra sign-off line or role for the engagement quality reviewer and allocate that also that the EQR can sign off electronically. So not all users will be able to do this, but it is then something that is very valuable in terms of efficiency when you get to that point. Okay, so with the quality management standards and the extended policies and procedures, all of that is also incorporated into your file. Right. In terms of special attention required, we also consider things like high-risk entities. There are questions about accountable institutions in terms of money laundering legislation. Remember, we don't have reportable entities anymore, reportable institutions. All of them are accountable institutions, but there is quite a long list, so make sure that you are aware of those. Then we get to ethical requirements. In terms of ethical requirements, you are prompted to consider whether we are able to actually comply with all the ethical requirements. And what I really like about this is that they've actually taken the framework from the code into consideration. So even where we do possibly have, let's say here we've got a self-review threat, we document the considerations, and at somewhere here, let's just see here, were the significance of the threats evaluated? So we identify the threats, then the framework says you need to identify the significance and consider whether the safeguards put into place does in fact eliminate the issues, okay, and then conclude whether you're able to comply. Moving on then to going concern, we said management is first required to make the assessment. So we first say, did management fail to make the assessment? No, they didn't. They did actually do something. So we consider that. If they did fail, then you're prompted to ask for them to go and do what is necessary. A few considerations in that regard, considering the financial, operating, and other conditions. Just remember, this is at the planning stage, right? So, of course, in all the other cases throughout the audit, you can always become aware of other instances as well. And then we are asked to consider the users of the financial statements. Are we aware of external users? So not are they going to cause us problems or are they making us worried? Just are we aware of external users? And then to ask ourselves, okay, changes in the transfer of ownership. And then the last question here is, does the firm's analysis of the users of the financial statements, does that indicate an increased risk to us as auditors? In other words, do I want to get more comfort before I sign off my audit risk? My audit report. Getting to the conclusion then, here we have, is there any reason why we should not continue with the engagement? We're just literally just pulling through from the engagement continuance conclusion. Are we able to comply with the relevant ethical requirements? What is the assessment of the going concern risk at the planning stage? This low risk is what we considered there. And then the firm's analysis of the users, which we said, no, there's no external or higher risk. These two questions, the assessment of the going concern risk and the firm's analysis of users, is what drives the desired audit risk. Someone asked earlier, where do I get the slide? That's the slide. We said going concern, users, drives the desired audit risk. So neither the going concern nor the users are causing us any reason to be concerned, to do anything more, to want to actually go and audit further, get more comfort. So we can take the highest level of the desired audit risk. I almost want to say take the highest risk if you want. Okay. So that's why when we then get to the desired audit risk, we have low. The other options being very low and minimal. The engagement partner, yes, probably ironic that you have it right at the bottom, but that's not necessarily the case. The engagement partner does work through all of the questions and then concludes and says, have I been sufficiently involved? Am I comfortable with the acceptance? Because the engagement partner is also involved in the engagement acceptance process, he or she can then see whether any other information needs to be taken forward. Then the engagement partner needs to sign. Now, let's say this is now Margot Manager who does this and she's completed it all. What's going to happen here? Margot Manager is going to maybe put her name there in the place of the engagement partner and she can't sign off because she's not a partner. I am currently signing as Larisha Govender, who is an engagement partner. In my Caseware setup, in my Caseware data store, I've allocated Larisha Govender as a partner. And when I then allocate an engagement partner, there's a space for the engagement partner to click that button and sign it off. But Caseware's template now allocates only instances where the person that's been signed in has the right to sign something off. Only then are you allowed to sign off, or can you sign off? Okay. If I had said there's going to be an engagement quality reviewer, that person would have had an option to also switch on here. Or let's say I've got that second partner reviewer, then that person can also sign off. Okay. But if I get here and I'm like, hang on, where's my EQR? My engagement quality reviewer must also sign off. Then you have to go use your document map. Okay. There's the document map. So there's my document map. Use the bookmarks to go and find the EQR spot and change the answer as is necessary. Okay. Don't go and, almost want to say, manhandle the items here so that it looks the way you would want it to. Go and change the right question or the right answer to the right question to get it the way you need it. All right, so that is the engagement evaluation and the considerations and decision about whether we should accept or continue the client relationship, as well as specifically in this case now the audit engagement with the client.